Detective Riley Adams woke up with a metallic taste in her mouth and the feeling that someone had whispered her name during the night. The grey morning light filtered through the cheap motel curtains, casting uneven shadows on the peeling wall. She remained motionless for a few seconds, feeling cold sweat trickle down her neck as fragments of the nightmare dissipated like smoke. It was always the same dream. A 7-year-old girl walking towards a circle of stones, her small footprints leaving trails of blood on the dry earth. 3 months had passed since Luna's reappearance, and the case continued to eat away at Riley like acid. She slowly got up, her joints protesting after another sleepless night on the cheap mattress. The bathroom mirror reflected a 42-year-old woman who looked a decade older, deep, dark circles under her eyes, disheveled brown hair, the pale skin of someone who had spent weeks investigating in places where the sun never fully shone. The phone rang as she brushed her teeth, and Riley felt her stomach clench. Only 3 people had that number: her boss, the social worker responsible for Luna, and no one else. She had completely isolated herself from the outside world, obsessed with a case that was officially filed as successfully resolved. Detective Adams, Dr. Henry Miller's voice, Luna's psychiatrist, sounded tense even through the crackling line. "You need to come here. Urgent." Riley spat out the toothpaste and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "What happened?" Luna spoke. For the first time in 3 months, she said something clear. A pause. She said, "You were in danger." Riley's blood ran cold. The girl had remained virtually mute since she was found, communicating only through those disturbing drawings that filled the walls of her room at the psychiatric clinic. Drawings always centered on the same symbol, a circle with 3 vertical lines. "I'll be there in an hour," Riley muttered, hanging up before the doctor could respond. The drive to the clinic was a winding road, cutting through mountains covered by a dense and seemingly endless forest. Riley drove in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel as her mind processed the implications of Luna's words. The child shouldn't know anything about her beyond the fact that she was the investigator responsible for the case. They had only met once, on the day Luna was found, and the girl had been catatonic. Dr. Miller waited for her at the clinic entrance, a tall, thin man whose graying beard couldn't hide his deep expression of concern. "She woke up screaming at 3 in the morning, he explained, as they walked down the hallways that smelled of disinfectant and despair. "She repeated your name several times, then said that they know where you are." "Who are they?" "We, and don't know, but there's something else." He stopped in front of Luna's room. "She drew this during the night." The drawing pinned to the door made Riley instinctively recoil. It was different from the others. Instead of the cult symbol, Luna had drawn a rudimentary map. Riley immediately recognized the road leading to the motel where she was staying, marked with a red X. Next to it, a hooded figure held something that looked like a knife. "How can she know where I'm staying?" Riley's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. Dr. Miller shook his head. "It's impossible. Luna doesn't leave this room. She doesn't have access to a phone, television, or any external source of information." Riley pushed the door open and entered the room. Luna was sitting in the corner, hugging a rag doll. Not the same one found in the suitcase, but an almost identical replica that the therapists had given her in an attempt to awaken memories. The girl looked up when she saw her, and Riley felt a shiver run down her spine. Luna's eyes were a deep blue, almost violet, and seemed to carry the weight of terrible secrets. "You need to stop," Luna said in a voice that sounded too old for her 7 years. "They know you're looking." Riley knelt before the child, keeping a respectful distance. "Who are they, Luna? Where is your mother?" The girl pressed the doll against her chest. "Mommy is in the place between worlds. She told me you were going to try to separate us again. Separate you from what? From Master Kale. He chose us. Luna tilted her head as if listening to a voice only she could hear. But the ritual isn't over yet. I came back too soon. Riley felt her mouth go dry. Luna, do you remember what happened the night you disappeared? The child smiled, and there was something deeply disturbing in that innocent expression. I remember everything. Mommy took me to the circle. There were people in white singing, and Master Kale said I was special. She paused, playing with the doll's hair. Then he gave me something to drink. It tasted like flowers and metal. And then I flew for a long time. I saw Mommy from afar, but she couldn't come with me. Luna looked up again, and this time Riley saw tears forming. She stayed there waiting. She's been waiting until now. Riley felt her heart clench. The child had been drugged, probably with some kind of hallucinogen, but her descriptions were too detailed, too consistent to be mere delusions. Luna, where is this place? The circle. The girl shook her head violently. I can't tell. If I tell, they'll hurt you like they hurt the other girl. What other girl? The one who asked questions before you. She had yellow hair and a cut on her finger. Luna touched her own index finger. Master Kale said she was interfering with the plan. Riley felt her blood run cold. There was no record of another investigator working the case before her. Officially, the disappearances of Letitia and Luna had only been investigated by the local police before being transferred to her. What was her name, Luna? I don't know, but she screamed a lot when they took her underground. Dr. Miller, who had remained silent near the door, gestured to Riley. They left the room, leaving Luna with her doll and her secrets. Detective, I need to be honest with you, the doctor said when they were far enough away not to be overheard. Luna is not a normal child. Neurological exams show unusual brain activity, as if she has access to information she shouldn't. What do you mean? Yesterday she described in detail the house where one of the nurses worked, including the color of the living room curtains. The nurse had never mentioned anything about her house in Luna's presence. Dr. Miller rubbed his temples. And there's more. Sometimes she talks about things that haven't happened yet. Small things, like what food will be served for dinner or when it's going to rain. A chill ran down Riley's spine. Are you suggesting she has paranormal abilities? I'm suggesting this child has been subjected to something that fundamentally altered her brain function. And whatever it was, the effects are permanent. They were interrupted by screams coming from Luna's room. They rushed back and found your girl standing on the bed, pointing towards the window. They're here, she screamed. They're here for the detective. Riley looked out the window and saw 3 figures dressed in white slowly walking towards the clinic's entrance. Even from a distance, she could see their faces were covered by hoods. One of them carried something that gleamed in the sunlight, a blade. Call security, Riley ordered Dr. Miller, drawing her weapon, and lock all the doors. But when she looked again out the window, the figures had vanished. Where did they go? She murmured, scanning the empty yard with her eyes. Luna had stopped screaming and was now sitting calmly on the bed, rocking the doll in her arms. They didn't come for you today, she said in a frighteningly calm voice. Today they only came to warn you. Warn me about what? That you'll go to them, tonight, alone. Riley felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Why would I do that? Luna smiled again, and this time her smile was almost adult in its malice. Because otherwise they'll do to all the other children what they did to me. Dr. Miller rushed back. I spoke with security. They didn't see anyone entering or leaving the property. Riley holstered her weapon but kept her hand near the grip. How many other children have disappeared in the region in the last 2 years? To my knowledge, only Luna and... No, Luna interrupted. 7. Always 7. It's the sacred number. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain beginning to beat against the window. Riley looked at the child, innocently playing with her doll, and realized she had two choices: ignore the ravings of a traumatized girl, or accept that she was dealing with something far beyond her comprehension. "Luna," she said, sitting in the chair beside the bed, "if I go to this place, do you promise you'll tell me everything you know?" The girl stopped rocking the doll. "You won't come back the same." "What does that mean?" "It means some truths. Change you forever." Luna leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper. "But if you don't go, they'll continue, and next time they'll take younger children, babies." Riley felt something break inside her chest. During her 15 years as an investigator, she had seen enough horrors to fill several lifetimes, but the idea of babies being subjected to what Luna had been through was unbearable. "Where is the circle?" Luna closed her eyes and began to speak as if reciting something memorized. 43 kilometers from the main road, entrance marked by 3 dead trees in the shape of a cross. Follow the trail until you find the red stones, then turn left and walk until you hear the river. The circle is where the river bends. The precision of the instructions made Riley shiver. "How do you know all this?" Because I'm going with you." "No way." Luna opened her eyes and looked at her with an expression that didn't belong on a child's face. "Detective Adams, you don't understand. I'm no longer completely human. What they did to me connected me to them. I can sense when they're near. I can hear their thoughts sometimes." She paused as if listening to something. "And I can feel that my mother is still alive." "That's impossible, Luna. Your mother disappeared almost a year ago." "She didn't disappear. She was transformed, like I should have been." The girl got up and walked to the window, watching the raindrops run down the glass. "But something went wrong. I came back too soon, and now they need to take me back to complete the ritual." Riley exchanged a worried look with Dr. Miller. "Luna, children can't leave the clinic without a court order. So you'll have to take me secretly." "Why?" Luna turned around, and for the first time since Riley had met her, the girl looked genuinely scared. "Because if you go alone, they'll kill you. But if I'm there, they'll try to capture me first, and that will give you time to do what you need to do, which is destroy the altar. That's where they keep the other children trapped between worlds." Luna went back to the bed and picked up the doll, including my mother. The rain intensified, hammering against the window with a force that made the glass vibrate. Riley looked at the 7-year-old child talking about altars and rituals, as if discussing the weather, and realized she had reached a point of no return. She could leave, write a report classifying everything as post-traumatic delusions, and try to forget the case. Or she could accept that she had stumbled upon something that defied everything she believed about reality. "Dr. Miller," she finally said, "I need you to go on vacation, today." "What do you mean?" "Get far away from here, very far, and take your family." Riley stood up, checking her weapon again. "If I'm right about what's happening here, nobody involved in this case is safe." The doctor stared at her with an expression of disbelief mixed with fear. "Detective, you can't be seriously considering 7 children, Doctor. If Luna is right, there are 7 children trapped somewhere, being subjected to God knows what." Riley walked to the door. "I can live with many things on my conscience, but not this. What if it's a trap? What if Luna is lying?" Riley stopped with her hand on the doorknob. "Then I'll find out the hard way." Luna approached her, carrying the doll. "Can I take her with me?" "Luna, please. She helps me remember who I was before." Riley looked at the rag doll with its button eyes and embroidered smile and saw something that made her swallow hard. The eyes had been sewn with red thread, exactly like the doll found in the suitcase on the beach. "Where did you get that doll?" They gave it to me when I came back. They said it was so I wouldn't forget. Forget what? Luna hugged the doll tighter. That I still belong to them. Night fell like a black cloak over the forest, swallowing the last vestiges of natural light and leaving only the stars as silent witnesses to what was about to happen. Riley drove down the dark road, her hands sweating on the steering wheel, while Luna remained silent in the passenger seat, clutching her rag doll. The car radio crackled statically, as if something was interfering with the signal. They had left the clinic 2 hours ago after Riley forged a transfer order for Luna. Dr. Miller had vehemently protested, but eventually gave in when Riley threatened to implicate him as an accomplice if anything happened to the other children. Now, driving down a road that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness, she wondered if she had made the stupidest decision of her career. "There," Luna said suddenly, pointing to a barely visible opening in the dense vegetation. "The 3 dead trees." Riley slowed down and saw the 3 twisted trees forming an irregular cross against the night sky. They looked like they had been struck by lightning a long time ago, their charred branches reaching out like arthritic fingers towards the stars. "Are you sure this is it?" Luna nodded, but Riley noticed the girl was trembling. "It is. I can feel them." Riley parked the car behind a clump of bushes, far enough from the road not to be seen, but close enough for a quick escape if necessary. She checked her weapon, her flashlight, and the small digital recorder she had brought, hoping to document any evidence she found. "Luna, I want you to stay in the car." "No." The girl's voice was firm. "They'll sense if you approach alone. They'll disappear like smoke and you'll never find the other children. It's too dangerous." "Detective Adams," Luna turned to her, and her blue eyes shone strangely in the darkness. "I've already died once. I'm not afraid anymore." The child's words made Riley freeze. "What do you mean, already died?" "In the ritual. I died, and then I came back, but a part of me stayed there." Luna hugged the doll tighter. "That's why I can hear the others, the children who couldn't come back." Riley felt a knot forming in her throat. "Luna, they're suffering, all of them, and my mother is trying to protect them, but she can't do it alone." The determination in Luna's voice broke Riley's last resistances. She got out of the car and helped the girl down, checking once more if her weapon was ready. The forest around them seemed alive with sounds she couldn't identify. Whispers, footsteps, breaths that weren't hers. The trail was poorly defined, winding between enormous trunks and vegetation that seemed to close behind them as they advanced. Riley kept her flashlight low, illuminating only enough not to stumble, while Luna walked beside her with unsettling confidence, as if she knew every stone on the path. "How many times have you been here?" Riley asked in a whisper. "Dozens, during the 3 months before the ritual. Mom would bring me to get me used to the place." Luna stopped suddenly, tilting her head as if listening to something. "They know we're here. How many are there?" 12 adults, 7 children, and Master Kyle." Riley did the math quickly. 20 people, including a fanatic and possibly armed leader. She had 16 bullets in her gun and an extra magazine. The odds weren't favorable. "Luna, we can still go back." The girl shook her head. "The red stones are right there." Riley followed Luna's gaze and saw the rock formations emerging from the darkness like bloody teeth. The stones were indeed red, not from the natural color of the rock, but from something that covered them, something that shone wet under the flashlight's beam. "That's blood," Riley murmured, feeling her stomach churn. "Animal blood. They make offerings every night." Luna started walking towards the stones. "But tonight, it's not animal blood they want." They skirted the rock formations and found a more defined trail descending towards the sound of running water. The river Luna had mentioned was more of a creek, meandering through the trees with a gentle murmur that almost masked other sounds. low, rhythmic chanting coming from somewhere ahead. "They've begun," Luna whispered, clutching the doll to her chest. "Begun what?" "The invocation ritual. They do it every new moon to keep the portal open." Riley was about to ask what portal when she saw the light. An orange glow flickered between the trees, accompanied by the sound of the chants growing louder. Adult voices intoning words in a language she couldn't identify, punctuated by whimpers and sobs that definitely came from children. They approached slowly, using the trees for cover. The clearing opened before them like a wound in the forest, illuminated by torches arranged in a perfect circle around a stone altar in the center. Figures dressed in white moved in ritualized patterns, their faces hidden by hoods that cast deep shadows where their faces should have been. But it was what Riley saw on the altar that made her blood run cold. 7 children lay in a radial formation, their heads turned towards the center, where a tall, thin figure, presumably Master Kale, held a golden chalice above something Riley initially thought was an 8th body. But as the figure moved, she realized it wasn't a body. It was Letitia. Luna's mother was alive, but transformed into something that could barely be called human. Her body was emaciated to the point of being skeletal, her skin stretched over, bone like yellowed parchment. Her eyes had been removed, leaving empty sockets that seemed to suck the light from the torches. And from her mouth, open in a silent scream, came a continuous low sound, like the moan of wind through deep caverns. "My mother," Luna whispered, and Riley heard tears in the girl's voice. What did they do to her? She offered herself to be the anchor, to keep the other children bound between worlds until all 7 were gathered. Luna started to move towards the clearing. "But now that I'm here, they can complete the ritual." Riley grabbed her arm. "Wait, we need a plan." "The plan is simple. I surrender myself. You destroy the altar. Luna, I can't let you." "Detective," the girl turned to her, and Riley saw that the tears in Luna's eyes shone with a light of their own. "I'm not asking for permission." Before Riley could react, Luna broke free and ran towards the clearing, shouting, "Master Kale, I'm back." The effect was immediate. The chanting stopped abruptly, and all the hooded figures turned towards the girl. The man in the center, Master Kyle, lowered the chalice and extended his arms in a welcoming gesture. "Luna, my chosen child, I knew you would return to us." Riley got her first clear view of the cult leader. He was a middle-aged man with long graying hair and eyes that seemed to reflect the flames of the torches. His face was handsome in a disturbing way, with aristocratic features that could have belonged to a university professor or a respected doctor. But there was something fundamentally wrong with his expression, an absence of humanity that made Riley want to run. "I brought the detective with me," Luna said, walking towards the altar. "As you requested." Kyle smiled, and Riley saw that his teeth had been sharpened to points. "Excellent. We have an audience for the grand finale." The hooded figures began to move, surrounding the clearing to cut off any escape route. Riley counted quickly. 12 adults, as Luna had said. And now she could see the 7 children on the altar more clearly. They were all girls between 5 and 10 years old, their skin pale and eyes closed, as if they were asleep. But Riley could see their chests rising and falling slightly. They were still alive. "What did you do to them?" "They are in a state of transition," Kyle explained with the patience of a professor. "Their souls have been partially separated from their bodies, allowing them to serve as conduits between our world and the higher realm." "You drugged children," Kyle laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Drugged? My dear detective, this is far more sophisticated than mere chemistry. This is spiritual alchemy of the highest order." Luna had gotten close enough to the altar to touch her mother. Letitia reacted to the touch, her moan intensifying and her skeletal hands moving as if trying to reach her daughter. "Mommy," Luna whispered. I came back to free you." "There is no freedom, my dear," Kale said, positioning himself behind Luna. "There is only transcendence." Riley saw the knife appear in the man's hand, a curved blade that gleamed with the same strange light emanating from Luna's eyes. It was now or never. She emerged from the trees, weapon drawn, aiming directly at Kale's chest. "Police! Release the children!" The cult leader didn't even turn. "Detective Freitas, how punctual. How do you know my name?" "Luna told us about you during the many conversations we had while she was visiting." Riley felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Luna was a patient at the clinic. Physically, yes, but spiritually? Kyle finally turned to her, and Riley saw that his eyes were completely black. "She never truly left here." Luna looked at Riley over her shoulder, and the detective saw something that made her want to scream. The girl's smile was identical to Kyle's, predatory and devoid of any trace of humanity. "Thank you for bringing me back, Detective. It went exactly as planned." The betrayal hit Riley like a punch to the stomach. "You lied about everything." "I didn't lie about my mother suffering, or about the other children being held captive." Luna approached the altar where Letitia continued to moan. "But they aren't held against their will. They chose this." "Children can't choose this." "They can, when properly educated." Kale moved around the altar, keeping the knife close to Luna's neck. "All these girls came to us voluntarily. Their families brought them, seeking spiritual enlightenment." Riley kept her gun trained on Kale, but she knew she was at a disadvantage. The other hooded figures began to move, closing the circle around her. And the suitcase on the beach, Luna's belongings. "A necessary staging," Kyle admitted. "We needed to attract someone with her skills, someone determined enough to get here." "Why?" Luna answered for him. "Because they needed a specific sacrifice, someone who represented the law, the established order." She looked at Riley with an expression of false pity. "Your blood will seal the portal permanently." Riley realized she'd been manipulated from the start. Every clue, every revelation had been carefully orchestrated to bring her to this place. But even knowing this, she couldn't simply abandon the children on the altar. "What if I don't cooperate?" Kyle raised the knife, positioning it over the chest of one of the younger girls. "Then we start with them, one by one, until you change your mind." Riley felt despair morph into fury. "Son of a bitch!" She shot. The bullet hit Kale in the shoulder, making him stagger back, but it didn't bring him down. Blood streamed down his white robe, but he continued to smile. Violence, how predictable. The hooded figures began to move toward Riley, but she was already running, firing as she made her way to the altar. Two of the figures fell, revealing themselves to be middle-aged women with fanatical expressions even in death. The others continued to advance, but Riley had reached her objective. She leapt onto the altar, stepping between the sleeping children, and pointed the gun directly at Letitia's head. "Stop, or I kill the anchor!" Kyle laughed, even with blood pouring from his wound. "Go ahead. That will only free the children faster." Riley realized her mistake a second too late. If Letitia died, the 7 girls on the altar would die with her. She had wrongly assumed Luna's mother was a victim, when in fact she was a willing participant in the ritual. "Surprise," Luna said, and Riley felt something sharp pierce her back. She turned and saw the rag doll in Luna's hands, but now the doll had a small blade hidden inside. The girl had used the doll itself as a weapon. "You're a child," Riley gasped, feeling the warm blood flowing down her back. "I haven't been a child for a long time," Luna replied, removing the blade from the doll. "I'm the first of a new breed. Half human, half something else." Riley fell to her knees on the altar, her vision beginning to darken at the edges. But through the haze of pain, she saw something that made her react. Luna's doll had fallen to the ground when the girl removed the blade. And now it was close, enough for Riley to reach. With her last ounce of strength, she grabbed the doll and examined it quickly. Inside the torn fabric, besides the blade, there was something else. A small electronic device blinking with a red light. A tracker. "Dr. Miller," she murmured, smiling despite the pain. Luna leaned over her. "What did you say?" "I said, you underestimated a concerned doctor." Riley held the doll tightly. "He put a tracker in your doll before we left the clinic." Luna's smile faltered. "Impossible. And he also called state police. They should be arriving any minute now." As if summoned by her words, the sound of sirens began to echo through the forest, distant still but rapidly approaching. Kale growled in anger. "Kill her! Now!" But the hooded figures hesitated, looking nervously toward the sound of the sirens. Some began to retreat toward the trees. "Cowards!" Kyle yelled. "The ritual is almost complete." Luna looked between Kyle and the approaching sirens, clearly torn. "Master, perhaps we should—" "No!" Kyle grabbed Luna by the arm. "Too much, and time has been invested in this. You will complete your transformation tonight." He raised the curved knife above Luna's head, but Riley, even wounded, managed to lunge forward and knock the man down. They rolled across the altar, fighting for control of the weapon, as the sleeping children whimpered softly at being disturbed. The knife handle was slippery with blood, making it difficult for either of them to hold it firmly. Kyle was stronger, but Riley had the desperation of someone with nothing left to lose. She managed to turn the blade, pointing it at the man's chest. "The children," she gasped. "How do we reverse what you did to them?" "It can't be reversed," Kyle laughed, even with the knife pressed against his ribs. "They belong to the void. Now, liar." "I'm many things, detective, but I'm not a liar." His black eyes fixed on her with a disturbing intensity. "Want to save the children? Then complete the ritual yourself. Take my place as leader." Riley felt something cold run through her veins. "What?" "The power doesn't die with me. It simply transfers to whoever sheds my blood on this sacred altar." Kale smiled with his sharp teeth. "So go ahead. Kill me. Save the children. But know that you will become exactly what you're trying to destroy." The sirens were very close now. Riley could see flashing lights between the trees. In a few minutes, the police would be there. "There's another way," Luna said suddenly. Riley looked at the girl, who was watching the struggle with a strange expression, no longer predatory, but almost regretful. "What way?" "If I die willingly, the bond breaks. The other children will wake up." Luna picked up the doll from the floor, hugging it to her chest. "But I have to choose this for myself." Kyle struggled. "Luna, no." "Sorry, Master, but some things are more important than transcendence." Luna looked at her mother, who continued to moan in the center of the altar. "Even more important than saving those we love." The girl walked to where Letitia lay and kissed her mother's skeletal forehead. "I love you, Mom, but I can't let the others suffer because of me." Before anyone could stop her, Luna grabbed one of the torches from the circle and held it to her own body. Her clothes ignited instantly, and she screamed, not from pain but from relief. The effect was immediate. The 7 children on the altar began to cough and open their eyes, as if waking from a deep sleep. Letitia stopped moaning, and her breathing became more regular, though she remained unconscious. Kyle emitted an agonizing sound, as if something was being ripped from within him. "No! Years of work!" Riley took advantage of his distraction to plunge the knife between his ribs. Kyle looked at her in surprise, as if he couldn't believe that a mere mortal had managed to mortally wound him. "The children," he murmured, blood dripping from his mouth. "They will remember." everything. And then he fell, his black eyes finally losing their supernatural gleam. The police arrived to find a scene that defied explanation. 7 children missing over 2 years, alive but traumatized, surrounding an altar where a wounded investigator held the charred body of a 7-year-old girl. 10 adults were scattered throughout the clearing, some dead, others having fled into the forest. Riley was hospitalized for a week due to injuries to her back. During that time, she gave dozens of interviews, all carefully edited to remove any reference to supernatural rituals or mystical transformations. The official version spoke of a cult that drugged children for sexual abuse, led by a mentally disturbed man who considered himself a messiah. The 7 children recovered physically, but all carried deep psychological trauma. None could clearly explain what had happened during the time they were missing. They spoke of strange dreams, of disembodied flight, of voices whispering in unknown tongues. Letitia survived, but her mental state never fully recovered. She was admitted to a psychiatric institution where she spent her days muttering about the place between worlds and asking for the daughter who had died to save her. Riley tried to visit the children a few times, but realized that her presence disturbed them. They looked at her with a mixture of fear and recognition, as if they saw in her something they preferred to forget. 6 months after the case, Riley requested a transfer away from the region. She could no longer sleep properly, haunted by nightmares, where she heard Luna's voice whispering that the ritual wasn't over. She moved to a large city, trying to lose herself in the crowd and the impersonal routine of urban crime. But there are nights when she woke up with a metallic taste in her mouth and the feeling that someone had whispered her name during the night. And sometimes, when she passed playgrounds or parks, she swore she saw a 7-year-old girl watching her from a distance, holding a rag doll and smiling a smile that didn't belong on a child's face. In those moments, Riley remembered Cale's last words. Power doesn't die. It simply transfers. And she wondered if, by killing the cult leader on that sacred altar, she had truly saved the children or merely taken on a burden she would carry forever. The answer came on a new moon night, 3 years later. Riley woke up in her apartment in the big city to find 7 drawings scattered on the floor of her bedroom, all made with charcoal and a reddish paint she preferred not to identify. All showing the same symbol, a circle with 3 vertical lines. And in the center of each drawing, written in a childish handwriting that she immediately recognized, was a message. Thank you for completing the ritual, detective. Now we are all your daughters. Riley looked out the window and saw 7 girls on the sidewalk in front of the building, all looking up, all smiling. She recognized each face, the children she had saved 3 years before, who should be in adoptive homes scattered across the country, living normal lives. But now she understood that she had never saved anyone. She had only taken on Cale's role as protector of something much older and more terrible than a simple cult. The girls waved to her, and Riley realized she had no choice but to wave back, because now they were a part of her, just as she was a part of them, united by a ritual that had begun long before any of them were born, and that would continue long after they all died. The next morning, the neighbors found Riley's apartment empty. No sign of a struggle, no clue where she had gone. Just 7 drawings on the floor and a rag doll on the bed, its button eyes sewn with red thread. And if anyone paid attention to the local news in the following months, they might notice a strange pattern. Children disappearing in groups of 7, always during a new moon, always leaving behind only a note with the same message. Flesh is prison, spirit ascends. But nobody paid attention. After all, the case had been closed. The cult had been destroyed. The investigating officer had retired. And somewhere, In a dark forest where the trees whisper ancient secrets, 7 girls dance around a stone altar, singing songs in a language that predates humanity. And in the center of the circle, a 45-year-old woman with eyes that are no longer completely human watches and protects, fulfilling a role she never chose but can no longer abandon. Because some rituals never truly end. They just find new participants.